Om Stavakaya Dharmasya Sarvadharmasvarupine Stavakaya Dharmasya Sarvadharmasvarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishna Te Namah Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormamritangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us bow down to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from the unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Today's topic, Vedanta of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was trained by Sri Ramakrishna in the practice of Vedanta. Swamiji got tremendous benefit and he got the realization of the truth. He just found out the reality behind this whole universe. And he realized the importance of man in this creation. He was the foremost apostle of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna wanted him to spread out this Vedanta to the whole humanity. We are celebrating Swami Vivekananda's birthday on this month, on 14th of January. It is on Sunday, so that all of you would be able to attend that program. We have special worship, bhajans and brief talk. So it is very significant that we should remember his teachings in this month of January, which is very sacred to us. Swami Vivekananda opened the eyes of the whole humanity into the practical Vedanta, how to practice Vedanta in daily life. What should be your background? What should be the basis of religion? How you should get rid of all useless superstitions in the name of religion. Sri Ramakrishna trained Vivekananda in various methods of practicing Vedanta. So, he got the awakening from Sri Ramakrishna. He did practice all the yogas and become adept in these yogas, karma, bhakti, jnana, everything was just very easy for him. He had that tremendous purity and perfection. His whole system was set, as it were, to practice religion and demonstrate to the whole world that religion is not simply fiction, it is to be practiced, and to be religious means to be divine. To be divine means to love everyone in this creation, irrespective of caste, color, creed, race. So the more you think of religion in this perspective, you feel tremendously blissful. So, Swami Vivekananda, in the course of his talks and teachings, has very clearly specified the whole universe is a play of unity in variety and of variety in unity. That's beautiful. Because of this variety, you feel tremendously joyful. Otherwise, the whole thing would have been monotonous. So the way how you look into things, that makes a lot of difference. So, Swamiji says that the whole universe is a play of differentiation and oneness. The whole universe is a play of the finite in the infinite. Play of the finite in the infinite. We can't take one without granting the other. But we can't take them both as facts of the same perception, as factors of the same experience. Yet in this way, it will always go on. These are the golden words of Swami Vivekananda, which you can find them in Complete Works, volume number 1. Swamiji realized the importance of man and elevated him to the status of God. Man means human being, man or woman. So, this was the only way to bring Vedanta into the practical life of a common man. This is known as deification of man. Raising his status. He made it clear that his Vedanta was man-making. It's a very significant word, man-making. Unless you establish yourself well in character, you have no religion, even though you have got the label on your chest. Even though you hold the banner and walk in the street, I belong to this community, I belong to this community. What's the use of simply advertising this manner? Establish yourself in good character. That speaks of itself. You don't have to make any advertisement. So, make me a man was his prayer. Man is the center of his Vedanta. He gave a clarion call to all men and women to accept his practical Vedanta. It's available. You can read that separate text, Practical Vedanta of Swami Vivekananda. He didn't accept anything which affected human dignity and solidarity. He rejected the religion which failed to come to the rescue of masses and which made man's life miserable materially and otherwise. He wanted to bring back the last glory of man through Vedanta. It is through Vedanta you can shine in all glory. This is the gift of Swami Vivekananda's Vedanta. Swamiji interpreted Vedanta in the light of the 19th and 20th centuries. How? By raising man to the status of God. Raising the man to the status of God. He synthesized the various schools of Vedanta in a unique way. There were so many Vedantists before Swami Vivekananda. They had worked out Vedanta on the spiritual plane only. But Swamiji worked it out to make it practical not only for philosophers but also for man in the street. He claimed that his Vedanta would help everyone. He said, if the fisherman thinks that he is the spirit, he is the Atman, he will be a better fisherman. If a student thinks that he is the spirit, the Atman, he will be a better student. If the lawyer thinks that he is the spirit, Atman, he will be a better lawyer. All these words are in Complete Works of Vivekananda. You find in volume number 3. As a keen student of the world history, Swamiji knew that unless modern science, unless the modern science was given the place, humanity had no future. Everything must be based on scientific way. He did not cancel scientific approach. Hence he welcomed modern science and wanted it to apply its method to religion and philosophy. He believed that experience was the only source of knowledge and argued that religion also should adopt the same method of investigation as is applied by science. If a religion is destroyed by such investigation, it was nothing but a useless and unworthy superstition. The sooner it disappeared, the better. Again, Swamiji has said like this in volume number 1. The greatest proof that we have of the existence of God, according to Vivekananda, is not that our reason says so, but the God has been seen by the ancients as well as by the moderns. Swamiji accepts Shankaracharya's views that Brahman is the only reality and the world is unreal. Swamiji accepts that. But the speciality of Swami Vivekananda is that he doesn't stop there. He adopts the policy of give and take. What he loses by the one hand, he gains by the other. In other words, he rejects, like Shankara, the reality of the world. But soon, unlike Shankara, he deifies it. What was rejected by Shankara as unreal gets the status of Brahman itself in the hands of Swami Vivekananda. Thus, Swamiji supplements and transforms the famous assertion of Shankara, all this is nothing, into all this is nothing but Brahman. Swamiji claims that the deification of the world is not against the teachings of Vedanta. He quotes the opening verse of the Ishavasya Upanishad, where it tells whatever exists in this universe is to be covered with the Lord. Ishavasamidam sarvam yatkincham jagatyan jagat. That's the verse. Hence, Swamiji feels that even keeping a wife and having children are not against the teachings of Vedanta, provided that one sees God in them. Seeing God, that's very important. If you don't do it, then everything is meaningless. Swamiji says, you can have your wife, but you are to see God in the wife and in your children. The whole world is full of God. Open your eyes and see Him. That's what Vedanta teaches. No Vedantist has given a better status to man than Swami Vivekananda did. Swamiji's conception of the relation between substance and the quality, noumena and phenomena, indicates that for him the universe is a real manifestation of the Absolute in various forms. He takes the traditional illustration of Advaita, the rope being taken as a snake, and says that when a man mistakes the rope for a snake, the rope vanishes. And when he takes the snake for a rope, the snake vanishes. Thus, according to Swamiji, dual existence is the result of wrong reasoning. Ordinarily, people think that Advaita, Dvaita and Vishishtadvaita, they are opposed to one another. People have that notion. Not all, but most of them. They think they are opposed to each other. But Swamiji says he doesn't believe that the opposition is real. He says that all these descriptions are of the same reality and as such are equally true. He said one is good, another is better, and again another may be the best. Good, better, best. That is the way of his interpreting Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita and Advaita. Good, better, best. But the word bad does not enter into the category of our religion. Swamiji says in the Complete Works Volume 3. He gives another reason for the variations in the descriptions of Brahman. He says that there are various grades and types of human mind. Hence a philosophy or religion must comprehend all these types if it is to satisfy and serve the needs of the various grades of human minds. Swamiji knew that although Shankara insisted too much upon knowledge, he could not completely ignore the claims of the heart in his practical life. If you see Shankara's life, how many hymns he has composed. How he is very prayerful. On the other hand, Lord Buddha laid too much stress on the rejection of metaphysics, and yet he could not avoid all metaphysical discussions. So, the problem before Vivekananda was to have the philosophy of head and heart with the end in view. He wanted to unite the intellect of Shankara with the heart of Lord Buddha. That is the concept of Vivekananda's Vedanta. Head of Shankara, heart of Buddha. Then it is complete. Then you are real student of Swami Vivekananda. Then you can really claim yourself to be the citizen of the world. Otherwise you are petty being. That's all. In fact, Swamiji went still further to include yoga also in it. He wants every one of us to become a yogi, to attain liberation. But he makes it clear that although a combination of the four paths, knowledge, action, devotion and union, is the ideal, yet even any one of these four is quite sufficient to bring liberation. Swamiji says, do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, by one or more or all of these, and be free. Thus we see that Swami Vivekananda's Vedanta is quite different from that of others in more than one way. But his real importance lies in the fact that he brought Vedanta to practical life. He was not satisfied with the limited scope of Vedanta in the hands of traditionalists. He thought that Vedanta could be carried into our everyday life, the city life, the country life, the national life, and the home life. There are numerous passages in Swamiji's writings and lectures to show that he did not like Vedanta to remain confined to the field of metaphysics. He quotes several instances to prove that the best part of Vedanta was learned not by hermits but by householders like Arjun and Janaka and others. All the rishis were householders. Swami Vivekananda wanted us to be courageous. You have to be courageous in order to attain freedom. He said that the word fear has no place in his Vedanta. Fearlessness, abhihi, is a keynote of his Vedanta. He wanted us to inject the implications of this word into the minds of the masses, and he firmly believed that the rest would follow in due course. Like a true follower of the Gita, he had nothing to say about the result. He wanted us to do our duty without worrying about the consequences. He said, we are to put the chemicals together. The crystallization will be done by nature according to her laws. Swami Vivekananda was the choicest person to give Vedanta to the whole humanity, so boldly, courageously, fearlessly. How it was possible? It is because in Swami Vivekananda we see a harmonious combination of all the yogas beautifully expressing themselves. Beautifully expressing themselves. That's why he gave us a monogram, a serpent, rising sun, wavy waters, lotus, swan, wherein he combines all the yogas there. Raj Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, everything is combined there. And is nicely shown, demonstrated in that symbol. A child comes into this world with a store of impressions of the past experience and knowledge. So, the spiritual grandeur that we see in Swami Vivekananda was there in its seed form from his very birth. We have 3 incidents of his boyhood days which show with what ease he could lose himself in a given idea, totally unaware of the surroundings. As a boy, he heard the stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata. See, these 2 epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, they have revolutionized the whole country. Even now, people at large are being greatly influenced by Ramayana and Mahabharata. Swami Vivekananda heard the stories from Ramayana and Mahabharata from his own mother. Mother would tell all the details. And the boy, he had tremendous purity of heart. He was captivated by the life of Rama. So much so, one day he brought an image of Rama, Sita Rama. He went to the rooftop where there was a secluded room. He installed the image of Sita Rama there, and along with him he took one of his friends. And then he sat there for meditation in front of the image. Of course, he had bolted the door from inside, so nobody could come and disturb him. Well, people at the home did not know where the boy had gone. They waited, they could not see him, and immediately they began to search for him. Where he might have gone. They searched every nook and corner of the place. Finally, they came to this secluded room at the terrace. They found the door was locked. They became all the more anxious and concerned because for many hours Swami Vivekananda was not to be seen. I am using Swami Vivekananda. In his boyhood days he was called as Narendranath. Well, it is easy to recognize immediately. Vivekananda means Narendra. Narendra means Vivekananda. So, they knocked at the door, they shouted, no response, as if there was nobody there. They could not even hear the breathing. Sometimes they may hear, if you put your ears closely, they may hear the breathing, They thought as if there was nobody in the home. But still, it is locked. So there must be something. So they were very anxious that something had happened to Vivekananda. So they opened the door by applying force. What did they see? To their utter amazement, they saw Narendra and his boyfriend sitting in deep meditation. Deep meditation. Where were they sitting? They were sitting in front of the flower-decked image of Sita Rama. They had nicely decorated, putting garlands, offering flowers at the feet. Just in front of the image, Swamiji was sitting in meditation, absorbed. Do you know his age at that time? Probably 5 or 6 years of age. 5 years boy doing meditation that way. So this playing at meditation aroused in him deep spiritual emotions. Another incident. One day, he took some of his friends, went to a certain place and sat there for meditation. They had started meditation. Of course, Swamiji already had gone deep into it. Just then, the other boys, they noticed a cobra coming near them, approaching them. They were terribly afraid of seeing this. They shouted a warning to Vivekananda, and they could not stand it. They simply ran away from the place. But Swamiji did not know anything. His meditation was not disturbed in any manner. He was totally absorbed in himself, in the thought of the divine. It was amazing to see Swamiji's form. He was sitting motionless. You see in the picture here, on the right side of Sri Ramakrishna, how Swamiji is sitting straight. That is the posture. The serpent, it did not go immediately, you must know that. It stayed there for a while, as if guarding Swamiji. As if to remind the world, Swamiji is Lord Shiva. I have got great privilege to be with Shiva, because serpent lives on the neck of Shiva. So, the serpent feels tremendous divine attraction and is staying there for a while, making round of Vivekananda. And finally, slowly crawled away and disappeared. On hearing what had happened, the parents became alarmed. They asked Swamiji, why did he also not leave the place? Why did he risk his life that way? And Swamiji's reply was very significant. He said, well, Father, I knew nothing of the serpent or anything else. I was feeling inexpressible bliss. Inexpressible bliss. Another incident, all this happened in his younger days. This third incident happened when he was just 14 years old. Even then he was a boy. His father went to Rajpur to be followed by his family later on under the charge of Narendra Nath. The journey was long and a stretch of it was through dense forests. The vehicles were bullock carts. In those days, people had to go by bullock carts. The party had been travelling several days in this manner. Narendra Nath was greatly charmed by seeing the beauty of the landscape with lofty hills on either side of the road, the verdant trees and creepers laden with flowers, and birds moving here and there with variegated colors. He saw a very large hive in a cleft in one of the hills, beehive. Seeing that colony of bees, Narendra lost all his outward consciousness. He was in that state how long he could not remember. These three incidents show his inherent capacity to concentrate the mind on one single theme to the exclusion of all other thoughts. And this is the very power that enables a person to reach God, realize Him. There was another peculiar phenomenon which was natural in Swami Vivekananda. Every night, before he went to sleep, he had the experience. What is that? As soon as he lay down and closed his eyes, there appeared between his brows a wonderful light. It would change its color and expand until it burst and bathed his whole body with its brilliance. As his mind was contemplating this phenomenon, he would fall asleep. Narendranath thought it was a common feature with all human beings, because every night he used to have this experience. He just asked one of his friends if he had such an experience. That friend simply said, no. This phenomenon remained with Swami Vivekananda until his last days. All these things show us to what deep a state of meditation had the soul of Naren attained even as a boy, and how natural it had become with him. Later on, he was in search of a man who had seen God. You know the story how he came to Sri Ramakrishna. Finally, when he came in contact with Sri Ramakrishna, he asked him, my boy, do you see a light when you go to sleep? He was the only person who asked that question. Narendra replied, yes, sir. Sri Ramakrishna exclaimed, it is true. This one is a Dhyana Siddha. Dhyana Siddha. An adept in meditation, even from his very birth. Sri Ramakrishna exclaimed this way. Swami Vivekananda is Dhyana Siddha Purush. Dhyana Siddha Purush. Meditation is an important limb of spiritual life. All the three yogas, Jnana, Raja and Bhakti Yoga, they include it in their disciplines. Every yoga has got meditation in its discipline. It consists in directing the mind uninterruptedly to one single object. If you take Bhakti Sutras, Narada Bhakti Sutra, the Maharshi tells about Avyavrita Bhajana. Avyavrita Bhajan. That is, uninterrupted loving service as one of the means. And what this loving service signifies, he makes clear in the subsequent sutra. By hearing and singing the glory of the Lord, even while engaged in the ordinary activities of life. Lokopi Bhagavad Gunashravana Kirtanat. That's the sutra. An aspirant following the Bhakti Yoga tries to remember the Lord by engaging himself in the repetition of the mantra, his name, and at the same time trying to keep before his mind's eye the form of his chosen deity. When the mind flows, as it were, like a stream, without a break, towards the object of its adoration, there develops in the spirit, in the aspirant, a special power of concentration and subsequently of meditation. To the follower of Jnana Yoga, meditation forms the chief discipline. Once he has acquired the power of discrimination between the real and the unreal, and the spirit of renunciation of enjoyment here and hereafter. For example, in the Upanishads we read, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Atma va are drashtavyaha sotavyo mantavyo nididasitavyaha. Atman is to be seen, and then immediately the means to attain this goal are mentioned. Should be heard, they should be cogitated upon, and they should be meditated upon. What you have heard, what you have cogitated, you have to meditate. Also, we come across a number of passages in the same scriptures which recommend upasana, which means worship or meditation. Every upasana has got meditation. So meditation is one of the important disciplines in all the yogas. In the Raj Yoga, it is the penultimate step. The next being samadhi or union with the ideal or the absolute. Without this power to concentrate the mind with one-pointed devotion to God, realization is not possible. An ordinary human being requires a lifetime or several lives to gain this power, even if it be in a small measure. On the contrary, we have seen how abundantly endowed was Swami Vivekananda with this capacity from his very boyhood. Sri Ramakrishna has said devotees like Rakhal, Swami Brahmananda and Vivekananda may be called Nitya Siddhas. Their spiritual consciousness has been awake since their very birth. They assume human bodies only to impart spiritual knowledge to others. And the Master never erred in his judgment for having attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He had the power to identify himself with the cosmic mind, which is the source of all creation, and thus he could read the past, present and the future of the devotees who come to him as if from an open book. Anybody who would come to Sri Ramakrishna would immediately know everything about him. A description of Narendra by Sri Ramakrishna himself further explains the inherent nature of Swamiji. Narendra entered this room, Sri Ramakrishna says, by the western door. He seemed careless about his body and dress, and unlike other people, unmindful of the external world. His eyes bespoke an introspective mind, as if some part of it were always concentrated upon something within. Sri Ramakrishna said he was surprised to find such a spiritual soul coming from the material atmosphere of Calcutta. The friends with whom he had come appeared to be ordinary young men with usual tendencies towards enjoyment. Swami Vivekananda sang a few Bengali songs at Sri Ramakrishna's request. One of it was a common song of the Brahma Samaj which begins, "O my mind, go to your own abode. In the foreign land of this world, why roam uselessly like a stranger?" He sang this song with his whole heart and put such pathos in it that Sri Ramakrishna could no longer control himself but fell into an ecstatic mood. This description speaks volumes for Swami Vivekananda's disregard for the things of the world, a quality of prime necessity for a life of renunciation. In his very first meeting, Sri Ramakrishna recognized Narendra as one who would spread this message in the world, as one whom he had seen in a vision. So, he was overwhelmed by seeing Swami Vivekananda. And Sri Ramakrishna started training Vivekananda in every possible way. During the visits Narendranath paid to the master, Sri Ramakrishna would ask the disciple to read to him from the Ashtavakra Samhita or some such treatise on Advaita, with a view to familiarize him with its philosophy. Sri Ramakrishna would ask him to read such books. The master came to know through tests that the path of this disciple of his was that of knowledge. However, to Narendra, then a firm adherent of the Brahma Samaj, which advocated the worship of God without form, but with attributes, the philosophy of Advaita seemed to be nothing but hearsay. And he would argue, Swami Vivekananda would argue in front of Sri Ramakrishna. He would say, it is blasphemous, for there is no difference between such philosophy and atheism. There is no greater sin in the world than to think of myself as identical with the Creator. I am God, you are God, these created things are God. What can be more absurd than this? The sages who wrote such things must have been insane. These are the words of Vivekananda. And he came under the training of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna heard all these things. He would be amused at this bluntness, but would only remark, you may not accept the views of these seers, But how can you abuse them or limit God's infinitude? Go on praying to the God of truth, and believe in any aspect of His which He reveals to you. But Narendra didn't accept these concepts easily. Whatever did not confirm with the reason, he considered as false. And it was his nature to oppose falsehood. Consequently, he never lost an opportunity to ridicule Advaita philosophy. Notwithstanding his resistance, Sri Ramakrishna persisted in speaking to Narendra about Advaita. One day, the master tried to convince the disciple, he was trying to convince the disciple about the idea that the individual soul, Atman, was identical with Brahman, but without success. Though Sri Ramakrishna tried to convince Vivekananda, Vivekananda would not accept easily. He left the room. He approached Hazra, a person who was living at the temple. Swami Vivekananda would begin to talk with him. He ridiculed and laughed at the idea, saying, "How can this be? This jug is God, this cup is God, and we too are God. Nothing can be more preposterous." Saying like this, Narendra was laughing loudly. Sri Ramakrishna just then came out of his room. He was in a semi-conscious state and entered into samadhi. The effect of the touch was amazing. Narendranath himself describes Sri Ramakrishna's touch was the magic touch. That day, it immediately brought about a wonderful change over his mind. He was stupefied to find that really there was nothing in the universe but God. He saw it clearly, but kept silent to see if the idea would last. But the impression did not abate in the course of the day. Swami Vivekananda returned home. But there too, everything he saw appeared to be Brahman. This state of things continued for some days. When he became normal again, he realized that he must have had a glimpse of the absolute Advaita state. Then it struck him that the words of the scriptures were not false. Thenceforth, he could not deny the conclusions of the Advaita philosophy. The person who totally opposed, now he is totally accepting it. In this way, gradually, Narendranath was led from doubt to certainty, from all objective concepts of the divinity to the awareness of the subjective nature of the reality, beyond form, beyond thought, beyond the senses, and behind all relative good and evil. Thus, Sri Ramakrishna trained Vivekananda in the method of Jnana Yoga. Narendranath, who was till then accustomed to pray and meditate according to the teachings of the Brahma Samaj, had to give up these up and take to new methods of meditation. He prayed, "O God, be gracious and reveal to me thy real nature, which is the embodiment of truth." And then he merged himself in deep meditation during the nights into the depths of his being to such an extent that he would feel a sort of intoxication which would make it difficult for him to leave his seat. Sri Ramakrishna taught Vivekananda various types of meditation. And that's about jnana. Coming to bhakti, Sri Ramakrishna minutely observed the physical features of Narendranath and said, well, your eyes show that you are not a dry Jnani. If you are blended, tender devotion and deep knowledge, tender devotion and deep knowledge are blended in you in a right proportion. And when he realized that he had all the features of the devotee, he began to give experience to Vivekananda in the path of devotion. He initiated him the mantra of Rama. He began to repeat Rama's name continuously, constantly, all the time. Several days he was in a blissful state. So Swami Vivekananda was all jnana outside, all bhakti inside. Bhakti was covered by jnana. And Swamiji was Dhyana Siddha Purush. Coming to Karma Yoga, he would say, I want care for liberation. As long as I see people are suffering here, we have to serve them. We have to serve them, then only life is worth. Otherwise life has no purpose. Serve the humanity. So he was tremendously active, but without a trace of selfishness. Tremendously active, without a trace of selfishness. That is the concept of Nishkam Karma. Everything is for the sake of others. Lord Krishna tells in the Gita, what do I have to gain in this world? What do I need? But still I keep working. Still I keep working for the welfare of the humanity. So, Swami Vivekananda, unto the last day, he was very active. Mind was always dwelling on spiritual ideal. Even the previous day he took classes for the monastics. And tirelessly he worked. Because he loved the whole creation. He loved the whole world. He loved everybody. Even his scolding was blended with love. Because he loved so much, he would scold. So that we may learn. So, the Vedanta of Swami Vivekananda is blending of all these yogas. Jnana, Bhakti, Karma. Everything must be done in a proper way, with a proper spirit. The basis of everything is love. So, let us try to follow Swamiji's teachings. As Swamiji himself said, what is needed is spiritual practice. The practical life of spirituality is important. So in your thoughts, in your movements, in your actions, in your speaking, everything must be spiritual. If you have that kind of practice in your daily life, wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, you will get the spiritual benefit of it, and you will be saved from all sufferings and bondage. With these words I conclude my talk. Thank you very much. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. May the Divine Spirit protect us, guide us, give us strength and right understanding. May we not hate one another. May love and harmony be with us all. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. May the Divine Lord protect us. May He nourish us. May we work in harmony with great vigor. May our study be illuminating and fruitful. May we not hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.